Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And I know we've talked about this for quite a while, but I know I'm interested in it. I think some of our listeners might be as well. And that's the polls. Recent polls have in most swing states Trump behind by about 4 points. But then on that same note, you get some other information that says tied in Florida. I mean, I don't really know what to make of it. Maybe you can help me and our listeners out in all seriousness.
Well, I think something that's important to pay attention to is that, yes, there's a lot of polls out there. They've got 3 point behind by 3 points, behind by 4 points. You're also talking about a margin of error of anywhere between 1 and 3 points. So you're really talking about the fact that he's only 2 points behind, given the margin of error. Remember 2016, Trump was behind by much more.
Was he really? I don't know.
Yes.
That. Okay. I honestly don't.
In 2016, Trump never came within 5 points of beating Hillary Clinton. They always had, and most polls had him much further behind.
I did not know that.
That's one of the reasons that on election day, most of the pundits had Hillary Clinton winning. It was a 92. I remember Bing had on their homepage that it was a 92% probability that Hillary was going to win.
Yep, I'm looking at that, and it was about a 4 point margin on election day. Yes.
Yeah.
About that. So,
I mean, there's a reason that Hillary Clinton came out during the Democratic convention and said, Biden could win by 3 million votes and still lose the election.
Mm-hmm. So you still give Trump a 60%.
Right now, I've got him at 60%. Based on what I'm seeing from different audiences talking on social media, specifically African-American males are not supporting Biden. They're not necessarily supporting Trump, but there's going to be a large group of these folks staying home. You see big splits in the Me Too movement over whether or not they should be supporting Biden. These are traditionally Democratic audiences who are saying, you know what, we are staying home.
How big is the hidden Trump factor?
The hidden Trump factor is also very big.
Got to be at least 3 points.
It's at least 3, and I'm actually guessing it's closer to 5. Because, first of all, we saw from polling in 2016 that Trump supporters don't respond to the polls. They hang up, they don't pick up, they are simply not counted. There's also
I think it's gone worse than that now, because I actually believe people are a little bit in fear of saying that they're voting for Trump. I see that all the time, just in personal conversations. Once you get to know someone, then they're saying, "Oh, by the way, yeah."
That's the other thing that I was going to say. Generally, Trump supporters will not tell you they're Trump supporters. They won't talk about it. They'll be very vague. Biden supporters are very eager to tell you they're Biden supporters.
No question, yes.
So that flip between the margin of error, the number of Trump supporters that aren't counted at all, and that reluctant to say that you're a Trump supporter, that skews these polls. And I've spoken to folks at Quinnipiac And they've told me the methodology has not changed since 2016. So they're doing things exactly the same way, which didn't count Trump supporters then, so it's not counting them now.
How big do you think the debates are going to be? I think they're going to be huge, and I think the Biden campaign is extremely nervous about it.
The debates are going to be massive. There's a reason that so many Democrats were coming out saying they don't want Biden to debate Trump. It's because Biden cannot handle himself in a debate. We've already seen this in one-on-ones when a reporter challenges him or when a person challenges him in a town hall. He loses his mind. You know Trump is going to push him to the breaking point. And Biden is not going to come out well.
But I think it's even worse than that, Dr. Lopkin. I think when you talk about being pressured for asking questions, I mean, he doesn't even get pressured. It's already a pre-approved person of the press. The question might already be vetted, and he still doesn't do well.
Yeah, he does not handle questions well. And we've seen that in certain interviews, the press lobs him softballs because he cannot handle the pressure. We've seen it time and time again. There are dozens of videos online that you can see where somebody from the audience gives him an unexpected question, challenges him, and he loses his mind and gets very confrontational, and that's not going to play well with a national audience.
No, it will not. Now, in terms of, it's still certainly a related issue, the vaccine. There's talk about even Fauci saying that there's a probability that it could come in November. How big of an event it will be, and how might it impact the election? And by the way, do you believe that's realistic? Let's start off with that.
If we get a vaccine before the election, that would be massive. I don't think, from what I've seen in the studies being released, I don't think that we're going to get a vaccine before the election, simply because of the time it takes to do these studies. I do believe that it's possible to get one in late November, December. And that actually goes to what the CDC was saying, that states have to be ready to distribute a vaccine on November 1st, because you want to have the distribution set up before the vaccine is ready, so that as soon as it's approved, they can manufacture and get it out quickly. So
yeah, won't that also impact the election in terms of, let's just say it's not available maybe, November 1st, but it's in the pipeline. I think that still plays huge if it happens.
I honestly, if the vaccine is available, it's going to be a huge win for Trump. I don't think it's going to be a big loss for Trump if it's not available, because right now, the vast majority of the electorate, both Trump supporters and Biden supporters, do not believe a vaccine is going to be available before the election. So it's already sort of factored in that we're not going to have a vaccine.
Okay, but couldn't that change people's views if they're saying, okay, it's not available right now, but by the end of November, we have a vaccine? I think that does.
That would factor into it.
It does soften the whole mismanagement, which is Trump's Achilles heel, the whole mismanagement strategy by Biden and feeling by the general public that he screwed up Corona to some degree. That mitigates it. Having vaccine in less than a year, it's pretty.
It would mitigate it, and there are methodologies that some of these drug companies are using. And remember, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for quite a number of years. There are methodologies that are being used for this vaccine that have never been available before. We now have a much more in-depth knowledge of human genetics and RNA, and these things are being utilized like never before. So having a vaccine come much faster than any other vaccine has been developed would not come as a surprise to me. Again, because we've got much more powerful computers, we have much more knowledge on genetics and the genetics of the virus. Remember, everybody talks about this as a novel coronavirus, but it's still a coronavirus. It's still, at its heart, very similar, not identical, which is why the existing vaccines don't work, but very similar to SARS and related viruses. So we have all of the research that was done on those vaccines that they're building on. So it wouldn't surprise me at all for it to be a much faster development. Um, Honestly, the big limitation in the timing is FDA approval and having the FDA go through things. Now, yes, the FDA can fast track things. I think a big factor is the drug companies came out this week. All nine major drug companies came out with a joint statement saying they will not sacrifice safety or efficacy to get a vaccine out quickly. That's important. Now, in all honesty, the drug companies have never sacrificed safety or efficacy to get a vaccine out quickly. That's not new. So for them to say it, they're not putting anything on the line because this is how they've always done it. But the vaccine itself has become politicized. There was one patient in the Oxford study that over the last few days developed adverse reactions to the vaccine. And last night, the news was going crazy about this. Oh, there's an it's going to hold up the vaccines. Every drug trial in history, every vaccine, every drug, someone has had adverse effects. This is not news. This is the politicalization of healthcare now. And
that would make sense.
And they're taking advantage of the fact that the general public does not know how these clinical trials work because most people have never been through them, because the people who have been in phase 2 and phase 3 trials are people who have had serious illnesses.
Yes, I would agree with that. Makes sense. We'll see how that all plays out. The final topic I'd like to broach with you and our listeners is the whole idea of the stock market. Pretty volatile. I was really surprised how it went up after the pandemic, but it's kind of somewhat of a roller coaster. What's your read on that?
It has been a roller coaster. The stock market is not an economic indicator. That's the first.
People always confuse that.
Yes, that's the first thing that has to, people
nothing
have to
remember. With it. It used to years ago. It was actually not anymore.
Years ago, but the more that trading is available to people, the less it's tied to the economy. The stock market has gone up throughout the pandemic because people are essentially betting long term. They're saying that when we get to late 2021, 2022, an investment made today, hell, it's going to be very valuable because it's going to go up when the economy does come back. It's going to come roaring back at some point, and that's going to push the earnings of these companies up. So it's been going up and up and up. And over the last few weeks, it hit several record territories. Every indicator, Dow Jones, S&P, NASDAQ, hit record levels. So now, over the past several days, you've got massive drops. And the main reason for these massive drops is that investors are looking at their investments and going, oh my God, we've hit record levels. My portfolio is up tremendously. 10%, 15%. Now is the time to take those profits and take them out of more volatile stocks and put them into cash, because now today you're seeing it bounce back because people who have taken out have gone, okay, you know what? Now that this has dropped more, I'm going to put the money back in the stock market and make more money.
I think the only volatile factor left is I think it'll be interesting to see what happens after the first debate in closing. I think if Trump performs well, I think the stock market will surge. That's my final prediction.
I don't know if the stock market will surge, because I honestly think that a second Trump term is already baked into the stock market results. I think the stock market is expecting a Trump victory. I think if Biden suddenly takes off and you see polls with 10 point leads, 15-point leads, 20-point leads, I think you're going to see the market tank. But I don't
agree with.
I don't think you're going to see a Trump leadership push, by itself push more, because I think that's already taken into account by the market.
Fantastic edition of Carnivore Bites in a relatively slow week. And we'll be back next week with another edition of Carnivore Bites, as well as this Friday in a live version.
Right. You can catch us live Friday at blogtalkradio.com/carnivore radio. You can be part of the conversation. Call in. Let us know what issues you're thinking about.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Lopkin. Thanks, our listeners.
See you then.
You've been listening to Carnivore Bites, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us every week on carnivoreradio.com, exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast Store, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.